YOLO composing gloves here, and today we are going to be looking at some multi-band techniques. We have two quick sketches to demonstrate some of these ideas. The first is a groovy bass line. Here it is with no multi-band processing. And here it is with the processing. Next is on the kick on this very track. Sometimes an effect needs to be on the whole sound, while other times only a portion of the sound should get the effect. Multiband methods are one way to just get a portion of the sound. In this case, it's a portion of frequencies. So first up, workflow wise, multiband can be a bit of a pain. There are two methods I like to use that simplify this. I like to use the plugin Multipass by Kilohertz. It's a plugin that band splits for you so you can go straight to work. It's very CPU efficient and it sounds excellent. It also has several effects in it that are also some of my favorites, including their transient shaper, and I am a big fan of their distortion unit as well. Another option is the Blue Cat 7 mix. I only mention it here, I don't actually use it in this video, but it's another great option. The last method I'm going to mention here for the workflow is using Patcher. Patcher is a plugin that lets you load up all sorts of other plugins in a more modular sense, and you can basically go crazy. It's essentially just an endless channel strip. I use it in this case to load up several multiband compressors and then mute different bands in order to create the band split signal, which we will then further process. So let's look at the synth line. Here you see the synth line going into two EQs directly into distortion plugins. This particular sound doesn't have any high frequencies really initially, and so that's basically empty. So we just patch that straight through. The mid band carries more of the resonant tones, and I'm going to use the EQ to set up a resonant pocket to hit the distortion, which I then move around and tune to exactly what I want. I follow this up with a chorus just because it's a bit sharp sounding and choruses tend to smooth things out. The low end gets a similar treatment, only its tone is backed a bit more before hitting the distortion, just trying to keep the bass under control. Separating the low end distortion from the mid-range distortion allows us to tune the distortions independently, and that is often much easier than trying to get a distortion on the entire sound to work out. Up next is the kick drum. This one has an EQ followed by a multipass on it. The problem with the initial kick I started with is it's way too boomy, and it also rings for too long. So we are going to be using a transient shaper and some EQ correction as well. First, let's just get the kick into a more tonally pleasant place. So we slap an EQ on just the entire kick, and we are going to remove some of the low end, get the low end into a more reasonable level. And also there is a patch of frequencies that I did not enjoy, so I went ahead and removed those as well. And this is already a nice improvement. but it's not quite there yet. There are still a number of things I don't like about it. So now we move into the multi-band processing methods. In multipass, we can see the kick in two ways. There's the lower half of the kick and the upper half of the kick. You could add more bands and view it more ways, but a lot of times just splitting it into two bands is all you really need to do. Here I've got three because I treat the very high end just a touch different than the other stuff. The lower half of the sound is what is taking too long to ring. So that's where we're gonna put the transient shaper. I don't want it to mess with the upper half of the kick. I just want it to ring in where that pitch bend down is. Most kick drums will have some sort of a visible pitch drop, and that's gonna be where you wanna put the transient shaper because that's what you need to wrangle into place. I also added a distortion of all things to the mid-range. This is something I actually like to do depending on the genre. This gives it a certain type of clickiness to the kick that I really like more than just a general mid boost. And at the very end of this chain, on the very high end of the kick, the final band, I put a Haas delay. Stereo imaging on a kick, who would have guessed? I really like to do these kinds of things, especially in multiband. I'll toss small Haas effects every now and then or some sort of stereo shaping idea. And the reason is it gives a sense of space without making it sound mushy if you do it to the right extent. And so I really like tossing it on the very high end, makes the kick sound like a little more spacious without it sounding muddy or getting in the way of anything else, which really helps in here because in my drum patterns, I'm kind of playing it as an instrument that plays notes, not just a kick alone. So there are two ways to use multiband, and hopefully you have some ideas on how you can put this in your own productions and sort of maybe have some experiments. You might get cleaner results or maybe you'll hate it. I don't know. Finally, we have, for our last example, a piano. Multiband opens some realms into the world of reverb that are pretty hard to close once you've sort of seen what they can do. So here are different delays and verbs used on different bands to create a different sense of space for each band. So it's basically multi-band reverb is all it is, but it's so cool to just mess with. Often with multi-band approaches like this, I will sometimes have bands really overlapping. So you can see here on the compressors, I've really got two of the bands just going into each other's space. And this just allows things to act more like layers. And this is something that's useful in multiband in general. You can have bands really overlapping with the same processing, but you tailor it to exactly where you want the processing to stop. And you can create more organic layers than it would be to actually add another synth or actually clone the audio file or route the audio file through a parallel bus. You can do it right here and it will allow you to tune it to exactly what you want frequency-wise. So there are a few multiband ideas you can try out on your next project. Leave me a comment down below on any ideas you have for multiband processing. It's one of those things where you'll hear things that you're like, why did I never think of this before? So definitely leave at least your favorite one down below. Subscribe and have a blessed day.